Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable Behavior Explained. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and I'm your host on Adaptable Behavior Explained. And today's episode is going to take a little bit of a twist because, as those of you who know and watch the show, I am a trauma therapist and EMDR specialist and have been for nearing 15 years now. And I think that a lot of times people don't recognize that therapists are just people too. And we come with our own histories, our own lenses, our own human experience. And I'm especially excited today to have with me my guest, Justine Bond, who I have been mentoring, I supervised, who is now my colleague for about 6 years now.
Yeah.
And so she actually approached me with a desire to do a show about this. And hopefully, for those of you who are deciding you want to join or begin therapy, this might help you recognize the experience of your therapist, and so that you can start the experience of going to therapy with just more information. For those of you who are therapists or becoming therapists, this is a show you probably should not miss, because be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. And oftentimes when we become therapists, we don't recognize how much of our own unfinished business we have to address. So, Justine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Justine Bond. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been in the field for almost 10 years now, but I've been a licensed therapist for the past 5 years. I work with couples, I work with individuals, children, families, pretty much the lifespan. And I'm also a certified EMDR therapist. So I really conceptualize from an attachment lens. It's really important as we talk about the journey to becoming a therapist today, because you really have to look within yourself when you think about attachment and how that shows up with our clients.
Right. And when I met you, when you introduced yourself to me, I knew that you were just this diamond in the rough, because you came in with so much energy and assertion and confidence, and your shit was super tight. But what I made up was there was some air of perfectionism. And perfectionism is it's armor. It's armor that we employ in ourselves so that we can appear
Yeah.
just so.
Yeah.
And so when I see people like that, I get excited because I recognize I can be part of the conduit in helping someone disarm and help them become their most truest original selves through the process of supervision and mentorship and encouragement of recognizing the things you need to address in your own work as it comes up. And so it's been a sweet little pairing, and it's been super fun to mentor you and watch you evolve. And so what motivated you to want to become a therapist? Because I think people want to know, why do people go that direction? And it starts to lay the groundwork for what we initially want and then what ends up happening. So tell us.
Yeah. I think I always wanted to go into this field because I saw an importance of truly wanting to help others and be there for others, and you were spot on about having this perfectionist tendency, because when I applied to work at Infinite, I was like, oh, I've got it all figured out. I've finished grad school. It's all good to go now. And I didn't know anything. And I think that was really an important part of my journey in becoming a therapist and who I am today too, because I thought it was just about helping people, but it really is about truly digging deep and learning how you can help and grow within yourself too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people think that you're signing up to be a therapist to help others. And that's, of course, what I wanted. I'll never forget my first graduate class when they talked about, what do you think it is to be a therapist? And I thought, you guide people, you help them figure out, their path.
Yeah.
And then when they said, oh, and it's not about giving any advice, I was like, oh crap, what am I doing here? I had all this great advice to give. I have all this great life experience, and I've done so much in the way of growing in my own journey that I think that then makes me more equipped to help others.
For sure.
And what people don't realize is that when you decide you're going to be a therapist, you're not just, engaging in something where you're going to meet others and help others in their journeys, but you're really going to meet yourself.
Yeah. 100%.
And that experience of meeting yourself can be challenging.
Very challenging.
Yeah. So tell us what that was like for you when you first started to recognize how much unfinished business you had to attend to.
I think for me, one of my first indicators was, and clients often come into therapy thinking, you're going to fix all my problems and you're going to help me and guide me in all the things. And I thought, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And then you realize, oh, I can't fix this, especially if you work with complex trauma, because there's so many layers, so many aspects of what people come in with. And that was hard for me because I had to learn within myself, what is it about this client that's in front of me that's making me feel super anxious in this session? Because I so badly just want to help them and fix what's going on and take all their pain away. And that's not what we're here for. It's about the
No.
journey of really being with the client in their pain. And I always give the metaphor of walking down a path together, and we don't know what's alongside the path, you know, and sometimes we have to stop and look and take some time really exploring that set of flowers, that
Right.
bush, that bramble breed, whatever that is, to really understand like where a client is coming from and the journey I'm on with them. And who
Right.
knows how long that'll take. And that was my other thing too.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, we should be done by now. Why is this taking so long? What's happening here? What am I doing wrong?
What am I doing wrong? And that
Yes.
leads me to, I think as a supervisor and mentor, and having helped dozens of therapists
Yeah.
become, more of their best selves through
Yeah.
the process of being a new therapist, and then, maturing in that craft.
Yeah.
That's what comes up the most for people is, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
What am
for
I
sure.
doing wrong when
Yeah.
the client is still drinking, or the client isn't following through with the coping things we talked about, or
Yeah.
the client is still whatever that is.
Yeah.
And they come back in with their same, song and dance about whatever it is they're struggling with.
Yeah.
And then we start to personalize that experience. They're not getting it fast enough. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah, for sure.
And so when you were able to make that shift more consistently,
Mhm.
talk about that a little bit for yourself.
I think it was so much about first having compassion for myself, because I think if you have perfectionist tendencies, and again, you come into this field because you really want to help people and do all the things and get it so right, you're really hard on yourself in that process. And so for me, I had to shift. It's okay. Slow down,
Right.
and I had to remind myself, like, I am a human in this room with another human being.
Which is, by all theories, the most powerful
Yeah.
conduit for healing is our
Yeah.
human presence and human connection.
Yeah.
Offering in a moment to moment experience for
Yeah.
someone what wasn't there at the time that hard things happened.
Yeah.
And, I can remember thinking, oh, theory and techniques
Yeah.
and, our high achiever, hustle for your worth type of
Yeah.
therapists
Yeah.
that are armed with perfectionism.
Right.
They show up with, such a robust tool basket, but then they are disheartened when all my tools and all my trainings and all my additional advanced certifications aren't making them better faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that can be frustrating because they're still under the illusion
Yeah.
that it's what they know that's going to help somebody heal faster.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's who we are in those moments
Yeah.
that helps someone heal faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the part that I think is so interesting. So, do you have a certain kind of client or a certain thing that happens in a session for you where you're like, I get activated? When we say activated, we're talking about, let me back up. We're not just learning theories and learning how to be a counselor, but we're really becoming intimately in connection with our own nervous system. What triggers us, what activates us, what of our own unfinished history gets remembered when we are listening through the lens of somebody else.
Right.
And then where is our own pain points still too raw,
Right.
where we then feel it
Yeah.
in connection with the person. And
Yeah.
that resonance is what it's called.
Yeah.
That activates in us our unfinished business. So we all have certain kinds of clients that will bring our own business up, and we feel it when we're in session with people. And we have a journey, we have a path where we can make a turn. We can say, this is triggering me, and make it about the client, or we can go, how can I use this to help the client? So tell us if you have specific kinds of clients that you run into this with, where you're like, these ones challenge me. And then do you know why? And let's talk about that.
It's so interesting because I think we often attract the clients that we still need to do work on in ourselves.
Right.
It's like, how the heck did they all end up in my office? But it's so beautiful because that's what also helps me grow professionally as a therapist, but also like personally, and again, that's the part that makes me the best therapist, is like how I can take that personal growth into the room with my clients. And I think the ones that get me the most are the ones that often overfunction, are caretakers to the nth degree, and who really want to make sure they get it so right. and
that's what you do.
yeah, it's exactly what I do. And I still do that till this day, and I think that's where my own individual therapy is so important and comes in, and every really good therapist should have their own individual therapist to address these things.
Yeah, when we screen for a therapist, when clients will ask me, can you help me find someone? And I give them a list of questions. And I've had some debate with other therapists about whether or not it's appropriate to say, are you in therapy as the therapist?
Yeah.
And I've had people tell me that therapists have said that's not appropriate for me to share my personal business with you. And I'm like, hang up and call someone else, run. Because if they're not comfortable enough to say, hey, of course, I think it's a professional responsibility that we maintain our own therapeutic relationship with our own therapist so that when we have our stuff come up, we go address it like now. Otherwise, it's in the way and it's not fair to the client.
No. And I think it's a twofold, right? Because when you notice that within yourself, it's important data to recognize this is probably what the client feels in the outside world, I call it, outside of the room.
Right.
And how else would I be able to go there with them and address that if I didn't feel that within myself too?
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
They feel things with us as well. That gets projected. I feel like they're critical.
We have names for that. Yeah. So for those of you who are therapists, this might be interesting to you because what we're talking about here is transference and countertransference. And so transference is basically that energetic resonance that we feel and we project our old relational, dynamics onto each other. And our clients project that onto us rather. Yep. And so we can use that when they over identify us as like a parent or perhaps like a significant other. So, a lot of people get a little jumpy if they're like, for example, if I see a man at the beginning, I will say it's not uncommon for a man to start to have feelings for their therapist as a female when we start to get into the unfinished attachment stuff. And it's not because you're actually attracted to me. It's because I am making you feel unconditionally cared for and safe, which may be a missing piece from a current relationship, or it may be unfinished business from like a historical relationship with a mother or a father. And so there's a projected transference of their need onto us as the therapist. Right. And so that ends up being something we can use. And I say use, if you don't get jumpy as the therapist and you go, hey, I'm sensing something's happening here. Talk to me about what's coming up and we can lean into that. We can actually use it to help our clients address and lean into that discomfort.
Yeah. And I think therapists don't take the chance to lean into it and instead take it personal or get scared or spooked if they're not doing that work to recognize what just happened in me in that moment. When the client said something.
It's being plugged into yourself and being aware.
Yeah. And it's so helpful. Like, I think that is the biggest pivotal moment in my journey as a therapist when I really could harness that and not take things personal or feel offended, or get scared by a client. Instead, just use it as data.
Right. Like I'm feeling a certain kind of way. I think we do it more even, in EFT training, which is emotion focused couples therapy, and there's emotion focused individual therapy. She teaches us to use it. Yeah. So can you give us an example of when you would use that transference when you see it and help, for example, in an individual or in a couple situation?
Yeah. For couples, it's often, when one of the partners is feeling a certain way and they're just kind of at each other in the session and I'm watching the cycle, which is essentially the conflict or the dance they kind of get stuck into, I might just name that for them really explicitly. If the spouse says something pretty offensive to the other spouse, I might just call it out like, wow. I often say, as your third party, as your outsider, that was a lot, that word. There's a lot of weight with that. Can we slow down and just check in with how each other feels as that was said, right?
Well, and you can even take it another step further and say, I feel so offended.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if your partner feels offended, or I'm wondering if your boss feels offended when you talk to them like the way you're talking to me right now, because I'm feeling that. So that's, a way if we're conscious and we're aware of it, we can lean into that energy and use it to help the client become more aware of themselves and how they impact the people around them.
Yeah.
Because what we say is if they're doing it in the room, they're doing it outside of the room. And this is where we take that moment to moment awareness and go, what's happening here happens there. Exactly. And so we have to be awake about it. It's not about what do we do. It's how do we attune to that information. And sometimes it can be conflict, sometimes it can be healthy, sometimes it can be an opportunity to show, an extraordinary compassion where perhaps somebody didn't when they should have.
Yeah.
And then there's that reparative moment. I tell my clients we're offering, or my therapist that I work with, we're offering now what wasn't there then, and creating this reparative, restorative memory now, so that we have additional data. Some people can be compassionate and caring and loving with me, even if my history has shown me otherwise.
Absolutely. I think that's so important too, because anyone that comes to me and is like, Justine, I'm really stuck on this case. What do I do? Mm-hmm. And the things I'm listening for is often, can you just use yourself in those moments? Mm-hmm. If a client is really shut down, if a client's really up here, instead of thinking, what do I have to pull out next from my toolbox, and how do I get them back here or down there? What
do I need to do?
Yes.
It's really, who do I need to be?
Yes. How do you just be there for them in that moment? And what would you do, again, as a human to human in that space? And just use yourself and trust that. And I think trusting yourself is the scariest part for a new therapist, because we have a bit of imposter syndrome.
Sure.
Who am I that they're going to trust?
Right.
Well, I don't know what to do. I'm this age. I'm that experienced, whatever it is. I haven't been through that. Doesn't matter.
And if we can get a sliver of trust, I'll even check in with a client and say, listen, I haven't earned your trust yet. I don't expect to have that. Those papers on the wall, that's not why you should trust me.
Right.
How you should learn to trust me, or what I hope to eventually earn from you, is your trust in time, that your nervous system can see and feel that perhaps I could be someone who could be there for you.
Right.
And that may take us some time. And things that I say may challenge that.
Right.
You might think you're starting to trust me, and it might get too close, and then you might get jumpy because you're afraid to trust me. Yeah. And that is part of what comes up. And so I think it's the therapist knowing that it happens, the client being made aware that it may happen, and not to run, to encourage the client not to run, but also the therapist not to run from the uncomfortable feelings that happens from that transference relationship. But we also have countertransference. So talk to us about how you understand countertransference.
Yeah. So countertransference is often when we feel something that our client is either doing or saying, but it triggers us, and that's our unfinished business. And that's the data too to listen to, because it's like, oh, I need to check this out with my own individual therapist, my consultant, my supervisor, whatever it may be, because that can't get in the way of the therapeutic work and the space that you're trying to provide.
It's really unfair.
It's really unfair.
And it happens to all of us.
All of us.
I mean, this is not a if it happens, it's when it happens.
Yeah.
What do we do with it when it happens?
Yeah, I don't know. When I started, I said I was perfect, so I didn't have that. But
humor is also a defense mechanism.
Yeah, but seriously, I thought, like, when they would talk about that in grad school, and I'm like, oh, that probably doesn't happen that much, and you just have to be like really good and tight, and it's fine. And no, it
happens.
Yeah, especially if you decide to be a trauma
especially
therapist.
When you're newer.
Especially
when you're newer, it's like every day is some kind of new evolution of awareness of yourself, and that you think your stuff is more tall, like tight, and you've got it more handled.
But I will say, and this is for like our clients, and I really want them to hear this message too, that only comes up truly because like we care.
Totally.
Like
if we didn't care, I wouldn't have an emotional experience about it. Totally.
Yeah. And like those are the sessions. And I know this isn't healthy, and this is why I like work on this, but I'll think about them after session, because I'm like, oh my gosh, what should I have done different? And I really wanted to make sure I could help them. And that's also data for me, because it's like, stop.
Right. You can only do what you can do in that moment. And then they can take their experience and their growth, and they can apply it or not.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm still learning too.
Right.
And I always tell clients that up at the beginning. I think you taught me this actually. Like, look, I'm human too. I'm going to make mistakes here and there. Please name it for me, so I can offer a beautiful reparative experience that you may have never
let me
before.
Own it. Maybe other people don't own it. And maybe you don't know how to go to somebody with your voice and say, hey, that sucked when you said that.
And even coming back from those sessions and saying, wow, let's check in with how the last session went. And again, that takes a lot of courage, because someone who's a perfectionist or always wants to get it right, there's a little bit of shame there if you feel like, oh, I didn't handle that.
I screwed that up. Can we just pretend like we did okay and we're over it?
Yeah.
That empathic failure happens in all therapeutic experiences and relationships. And the ultimate opportunity for repair is the circle back.
Yeah.
Hey, I got defensive or I got
Yeah.
jumpy or I maybe
Yeah.
offered too much too fast and that was
Yeah.
poor judgment on my part. And
Yeah.
I hope you can forgive me for that,
Yeah, and those are the clients
Right.
that I honestly have probably the strongest therapeutic relationship
Right.
after that because so much can change,
Oh,
even
the
if it feels
repair?
uncomfortable.
The
Yeah.
repair is the money. I mean, that's
Yeah.
where there's like a true relational
Yeah.
repair practice
Yeah.
that they can then borrow from us until they
Yeah.
go out into the real world and do it with others. And
Yeah.
so they get to use us if we are responsible therapists and we show up the way we're supposed to when we
Yeah.
blow it. They get to practice with us on how to manage those conflicts.
Absolutely.
And so I think that a lot of times therapists think, oh, well, I came in too hot or I did this or I did that, and
Yeah.
they're probably going to fire me. And I'm just like encouraging them to go, hey, what did you do next?
Yeah.
Did you say, that was a lot?
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
I've had several times where I've noticed the countertransference, and I can tell you it's been related to either unfinished business with like my parent style, my
Mhm.
parent choice, or my parent story rather, like my parenting story of my own parents,
Yeah.
and then the ones that get me now are really related to my kids.
Yeah, for sure.
Like when kids or young adults are struggling with something,
Yeah.
it brings up, areas where I wish I would have done something different with my own kids, or
Yeah.
areas where I feel helpless about where they are
Mhm.
currently in their own growth and really wanting to overfunction to help this young man in front of me with whatever they're struggling with, because, I don't have the position to do that with my kids at this point. They're all
Yeah.
grown and that's their journeys to
Yeah.
work towards. So it's interesting how that shows up for me.
Yeah.
I call it my litmus test where my unfinished business is still challenging me. And my kids tend to be my kryptonite.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, that's where I'm like, ugh, that was a
Yeah.
kid unfinished business thing.
Yeah.
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 Do you have any kind of thing that happens with you the most?
I think
I mean, you mentioned before, like the overfunctioning perfectionist type of client. It brings up how you are, but is there any specific kind of story data that brings up unfinished things for you?
I think growing up as an only child and a child of divorce too, there's a lot that happens as you're trying to navigate the world between both parents and a lot of the experiences that they're kind of going through and their own trauma stories and healing. It can be really hard to be in the middle of that.
Like parents are people too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And I didn't quite see it as that at the time. I just
Mhm.
saw it as like, let's get my shit together and let's keep going and what's next. And I got the good grades and I was on the varsity cheer stuff and like the dance team and all the things. And I didn't realize that was a mask behind like I was pretty alone and I
Mhm.
wasn't able to share a lot about how I was feeling, whether it was stuff that was coming up with my mom and her house or stuff that was coming up with my dad and his house
Mhm.
and everything in between.
Mhm.
And I think it socially reinforced itself too that everything looked really good, so no one really
Sure.
asked, like,
Right.
how I was really doing.
Well, and you always paint the bright smile when you're
Yes.
suffering,
Yes.
and that is a great adaptation. If I'm smiling and I am going along and getting along, then I'm pleasing,
Yeah, exactly.
and I'm not part of the problem if I'm
Yeah,
pleasing.
and I
Yeah.
think again as an only child,
Mhm.
you're the only one that can help your parents if they are really struggling through
Mhm.
something too. And so I was over functioning in that way in a pretty parentified role very early on.
Mhm.
And I think that plays into why I became a therapist,
Right.
because
Sure.
I wanted to help others and I wanted to be that person and that figure for them. And that was
Mhm.
hard. I had to unlearn a lot of things
Sure.
in order to be a really successful, healthy therapist.
Right. Let's talk about, we alluded to it a little bit at the beginning, like the concept of self as the therapist. And I know this is an area for which you have a lot of passion. I know you're definitely trying to mentor our less experienced staff at times on this concept. So
Yeah.
what does it mean when you say use yourself as the therapist and why that's so important?
I think it's first recognizing, what does this client bring up in me if they're a
Mhm.
challenging client? Because the challenging clients or those cases are honestly the ones where you have to use yourself the most,
Right.
and if you can really embody an empathic, nurturing, secure approach, clients will meet you there.
Hmm.
It may not happen in the first couple sessions. And I think that's what stumps people.
Hmm.
They're paying me and they're coming here to get help, but they're being so difficult with me. It's like, well, let's think about their story.
We used to use the word resistance, and I encourage
Yeah.
people not to use that word with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you really have to think about where this person came from and think of your own story and where you came
Mhm.
from. Is it really similar to that or is it really
Mhm.
oppositional from that? And
Mhm.
that might be what's in your way.
Right.
But that aside, I try to get them to think about who is this person on a bigger picture, not just how they're
Mhm.
presenting.
Right.
And by using that, I think it softens a lot of therapists because they can understand, oh, that makes me sad,
Sure.
and
If we can't meet a client with unconditional positive regard and
yeah,
compassion,
yeah,
we have work to do.
yeah,
Because whatever they
absolutely.
are doing, even if it's difficult or challenging us,
Yeah,
they're here for a reason.
yeah,
They're coming to address their stuff, and we need not to meet them with judgment. And
yeah,
so I think, to just expand upon that a little, to me, it's like really behaving with such intention, knowing your attachment style, knowing what's going to get activated in you as the therapist,
mhm,
recognizing you need to know the attachment style of your client, and you need to know that in a hurry,
yeah,
because that's the data that says, here's how
yeah,
I need to show up for them, and here's what's going to get triggered if
yeah,
I don't, in
yeah,
me and in them.
right.
And being really intentional and responsible
Mhm.
about that. When therapists are staffing cases and they're activated, 99% of it doesn't go back to what you did wrong technically.
Right,
It's
right.
what happened in you when,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
exactly.
for sure.
Exactly. And I think those are the questions we ask as supervisors or as mentors, like first, what are you feeling about this client in
Mhm.
this moment? What's happening in you?
Mhm.
And then we'll get to the technical stuff because if that isn't addressed first,
Yeah.
we're not going to get very
Yeah,
far.
I can give you an example. I can remember a time when I was newer. I was probably only a therapist for about a year at the time, and I
Mhm.
had a client who she was in a faith that was not permissive of being a gay or a lesbian,
Mhm.
and she didn't want to be a lesbian. She knew, really a long time that she was, since she was a child. And she went to her church leaders and she was like, I need help. I don't want this to be my truth. And they really shamed her. And they told her she needed to take a break from coming to church and that she wasn't allowed to pray with the rest of the congregation. And
Mhm.
I was so furious. I mean,
Yeah.
I could not help her in that moment. I was so mad and I felt so protective and I was so angry.
Yeah.
And I noticed it and I didn't even know what to do with it because I was ready to just like F-bomb these people. Like, how dare you
Yeah.
do this to somebody who's coming to you with vulnerability, who's coming to you with their pain points, and you're going to shame them into like exile?
Right.
How is that connection? How is that belonging? I mean, you can hear it in my voice now. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
like so vehemently against
Yeah.
that kind of approach with
Yeah.
an abuse of power or whatnot. And I remember looking at her and I said, "Can I just take a minute? I need to step outside." I mean, it was that bad. I was
Yeah.
furious and
Yeah.
I was just huffing and puffing in the hallway for a few minutes and I got some deep breaths and I came back in the room and I just said, "I am so sorry that that happened to you. And I want to let you know that I had to step out because I was so angry it wasn't going to help you.
Yeah.
I was so angry that I just heard that happen to you
Yeah.
and that you went through that." And so I used my countertransference related to like an abuse of power to
Yeah.
meet her with so much more acceptance and understanding and validation about her experience, that I think it was a really trust building
Yeah, for
moment
sure.
for us.
For
Like,
sure.
she knew I saw her and I
Yeah.
showed up like a protective parent ought to have, had
Yeah.
they known that happened,
So true.
and said, "Not okay, not on
Yeah.
my watch." And I said,
Yeah.
"And although that's not my job in that moment, we as therapists have to be a good enough parent to model what needed to happen until they don't need it anymore. And then we can
Yeah.
graduate them and say, you got this.
I
You don't
love
need
that.
somebody to be there on your behalf in that same way because you can do it for you now."
Yeah.
But if they never knew what it looked like or what it should have looked like,
Yeah.
I think we owe it to our clients to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so when we can bring that caretaking, protective energy when needed, using our countertransference responsibly, I think it can be really powerful
Yeah, yeah.
for sure.
I know. This is probably why I never liked in grad school when they teach you also, you need to have a blank slate as a therapist.
Oh, that's funny. Pick
I'm
pick no one for this role. Pick no one to be a therapist if you need a blank slate. I actually think clients, or rather therapists who have had more tumultuous stories
Yeah.
and have done more of their work,
Mhm.
are actually better
Mhm.
because they can relate to more varied experiences
Yeah.
from this relational way
Yeah.
and more easily.
Right.
Not to say that you need to be a horse to be an equine,
Right.
veterinarian, but
Right.
and a lot of times people will call and screen for that. They're like, I need to see someone who's had this many
Yeah.
kids or had a spouse who was in the military or whatever else. And it's like, that's not true.
Yeah.
Although a person might think that's going to be more relatable for them.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not necessary because all we have to do is pull from within ourselves the same emotion that the person is experiencing, and then we can match it. So even though maybe I haven't had like, like a parent die, I've had loss, I've had grief, I've had things pass, I've lost relationships that were very dear to me. And so I can pull from that loss and relate with a client with that. That's really what we need to have. But my thought was really related to, we have to know ourselves and what we are going to bump up against.
Yeah. And
for sure.
I think the most important message for clients too is, you guys really teach us so much about ourselves in this journey.
Right.
You help us become better therapists.
Right.
I even had a client who told me that when I first started with her, like early in my career, and she stayed with me for about 4 years. And she's like, I just want to let you know, I've truly seen you grown so much in this process. And I've stuck with you because I saw like the change happening, and it's been a beautiful, so helpful transformation. And I feel the same way with my clients.
Sure. We learn so much from our clients about not just technique and modality, but we also learn so much about ourselves and the human experience. And I think we're so freaking lucky. I tell people I have the best job in the world because I get to walk along these heroes who have faced things in their lives that are unimaginable, and they persevere.
The resilience.
Yes.
It's crazy.
The human resilience is so, it's just so amazing and inspiring. But as therapists, we hold tremendous responsibility to not make their stuff ever about us. And so, I've talked about it on other episodes, but our primary responsibility is what? And doing our own work, doing our own work, and meaning we continue supervision, we continue consultation if we no longer need supervision. We get other eyes on our cases so that we're not, working in a vacuum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Flying blind for sure. What other nuggets do we need to impart on our viewers, both, any potential clients that are looking to explore therapy for themselves, or therapists who haven't really heard this topic this way?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like we covered a lot of really, really great points, and I really wanted to kind of say the message at the end of like, we really do grow with our clients too, but I think it's a feeling when you walk into the room and you have this felt sense of safety with the person in front of you, as a client looking for a therapist. I think that's really important. And that's something that a therapist, I feel like, can really embody and harness if they're doing their own work.
Right.
And they're able just to be present with whatever the client is bringing up for them. And I would say for therapists, I think it's really important to continue doing your own work, as we've said so many times, but also trusting the process.
Right.
And if it feels like you're not getting it right, it's okay. I don't even know, like, I'm thinking the most seasoned therapists that I work with, they have not arrived. You never do.
There's no such thing.
There's no such thing. But I think people have that expectation. Like, I should be this good at my career by now. I've been doing this long enough. We're in a field and in a job where things are always changing. You never know what's going to walk into your office, which is partially probably why we picked a lot of this. I know I did. I didn't want just like a 9-to-5 cubicle job.
Every person's different. Every story is different. And their experience of their story is different than anyone you've seen before. And so
I feel like that's something too no other job can give you. And that's what makes this so cool.
It's special.
It really is. And the person you will become, throughout this journey is so important. So it's really hanging in there too.
It challenges us. It challenges us though. You can't hide from it. And when we get triggered by a client, I come in pretty hot with our staff about, you need to clean up your business.
Yeah.
They are not paying you to have your unfinished business in their room. You need to handle it and address that. So I think it's an ongoing exploration of self, and
sure is.
We're lucky to get to do it.
Yeah.
And I feel very pleased with my career choice for sure.
Yeah.
We're not dead, so we're not done.
Yes.
We've got more work to do. And I tell clients the same thing. I'm like, I don't know, I'll be here forever. And if you need, to come back for a tune-up when you're done, we'll address it when it's time. So thank you so much for encouraging me, for being brave enough to come to me with this topic, and also for your, you got me a little choked up before we started today, because you said, I really wanted to do this show because, of our time together. And I thought that was really special. And just to get to experience watching you grow over the last 6 years has been so fun. And watching you now mentor and take people under your wing it's really what it's all about, paying it forward and continuing to help others learn. So thank you so much for this time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are someone who wants therapy, we can throw some resources in our description below. EMDRIA.org is a great place to look for an EMDR therapist in your area. And I have another episode on how to find a therapist, so you can check that out. We'll make sure we get that link in the show notes. And therapists are human too. We have lots of growth we need to make. Please call out your therapist if you're noticing something come up with them. I think that it gives them an opportunity to take accountability for it. And don't run away because they've activated you, or they were activated. Circle back and address it with them. It's really one of the most important parts of the therapeutic experience. It's challenging business being in therapy and being a therapist. And if you're willing to brave that with a therapist, there's so much to be gained from that experience. So I encourage you to take the plunge. If you're a newer therapist, or even a therapist who's been doing this for a while and this resonated for you, please share it with a colleague. I think we need to make sure that we validate the human experience and really help to unshame us as therapists, that we are not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We need to have some grace for ourselves and for one another, in for addressing these things. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this topic, please subscribe or share it with somebody that can value, or that you think could get some value out of it. And until we meet again, don't forget to lead with love. It'll never steer you wrong.